What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 343 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. If you watched yesterday's video, you know that I sound incredibly sick. I don't feel that bad, but my voice sounds extremely awful, so you can just pretend like I'm doing the Batman voice, and since I am once again talking about a Batman book, that is going to be somewhat appropriate. Today, I'm going to be talking about Batman Joker, The Dark Wild. This is another Batman Elseworld story from the 90s. This is written by Doug Monk, with art by Kelly Jones, as well as John Beatty. And this is a reasonably short story. It's not very long at all. It's like maybe 80 pages, something like that. Maybe 100, no more than 100. And the basic premise here is that this is a fantasy world set sometime in the vague Dark Ages. The Joker is an evil sorcerer who is trying to get ultimate power, and then we find out that a lot of his power was cast away and locked away in a box by this world's version of Thomas and Martha Wayne, and then he goes and kills them as they are trying to create a dark demon child to fight against the Joker. And the dark demon child is this world's version of the Batman. You can see him right there. That is basically Batman. And this is one of those things where I read this story and I'm thinking that this almost doesn't feel like a Batman story, and technically it doesn't have to feel like a Batman story because it's an Elseworld story. The mission statement of Elseworlds on most of the Elseworld stories that I've read is as follows. I'm going to read this right here. In Elseworlds, heroes are taken from their usual settings and put into strange times and places, some that have existed or might have existed, and others that can't, couldn't, or shouldn't exist. The result is stories that make characters who are as familiar as yesterday seem as fresh as tomorrow. So technically, there is no mandate that these characters have to feel like the characters that they are based on. If you're going to do a Batman fantasy story, there's nothing that says he has to resemble the Batman that we know and love, except that I want this to feel somewhat like Batman because his name is on the book, and this has a lot of Batman elements in it, a lot of Batman tropes that you will recognize. At one point, the Commissioner Gordon of this world does a Batman signal, but it's not the same kind of Batman signal that you know and love because electricity doesn't exist in this world, or at least harnessed electricity doesn't exist in this world. You get to see the Joker here. You get to see a version of Catwoman, but she is nothing like the Catwoman that we know from DC Comics. You get a Bat Demon who is kind of sort of Batman, but he really doesn't resemble Batman in any way, physically or even in terms of his characteristics. And it's okay if you're going to change things in an Elseworld story. That's part and parcel of the package, but I really wish that this felt a little bit more like a Batman story, and it's hard for me to put my finger on exactly why I feel that way, because like I said, Elseworld stories are not beholden to the DC Universe. They don't have to feel like the DC Universe. They can do whatever they want with the story that they are telling because this is an Elseworld story and it's not going to affect the rest of the DC Universe. I just wish that when I was reading this that it felt a little bit more like a Batman story. Just because you include a guy who looks like the Joker but has magic powers doesn't mean that the Joker is in a story. Just because you have a guy named James with a Y doesn't mean that Commissioner Gordon is in a story. Just because he shoots a flaming arrow into the sky doesn't mean that the bat signal shows up in the story. There's a lot of lip service to Batman stuff here, but this doesn't feel like a Batman story. Now, I will go ahead and say I like this a lot more than some other Kelly Jones comic books. A lot of times, Kelly Jones's art does not do anything for me. I think he does really good covers, but I don't really like his interior art most of the time. But since this is supposed to be a horror fantasy comic, I think that his art is much more suited to this genre than general superhero stuff. A lot of times, he has Batman's ears being like 4 feet tall, and then he's got just a cartoonishly long cape that could not possibly exist, and sometimes that stuff just rubs me the wrong way. Here, we don't have any of those problems because whenever it does get really weird and creepy, I feel like it serves the story in a way that it doesn't do as much whenever he's doing a normal Batman comic. So I don't think this story is bad. I enjoyed it on a fantasy level story, on a fantasy story level. I'm sorry, I can't speak today. But as a Batman story, it doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't feel like a Batman story, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. This maybe wasn't even trying to be a Batman story, but then again, you put Batman's name on the title, I kind of expect it to have some semblance of a Batman story, even if it is an Elseworld story. So those are my thoughts on Batman Dark Joker The Wild. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.